Hey, legends, welcome back to the Mason Cox Show. A lot of juicy talk today. We got Brayden absolutely tease off with Essendon this week. Oh, that is going to be fun. We also got Ken Hinkley's back. Port Adelaide gets the W over the weekend. Love Ken Hinkley. And lastly, are we back on flag battle? Is that a thing now? They got the big win over Sydney by a point. We're going to break that down and much, much more on this episode starting now. All right, legends, let's get straight into it. Big episode, but to start off, as always, welcome, Brayden.
What do you think? I reckon we had a pretty good weekend of footy. I've been pretty disappointed coming in here, post-buys and all that crap.
Last week you were on fire. You were furious.
I just hate the big blowouts. There was a couple of, big scores this week, a lot of tight stuff. The rain starts coming down in winter and teams just tighten up a bit, but there was some pretty free-flowing footy across the weekend, so I'm looking forward to diving into it. I want to get over to you for your clanger, and I want you to start us off this week.
Oh, it's a rough week for Melbourne fans. Lost up in Brisbane. We're going to get into that, but also there was something else that happened. Max Gawn, love the man. Big fan of Max Gawn on the podcast. He loves a bit of biking, right? Loves to get out there, loves the Tour de France, very, very out there about his love for the bicycle, and he had his kid in this video, and the kid's safely with the helmet on in front of him, and he's filming, and unfortunately for Melbourne fans, his kid's singing the wrong song. His kid's singing the Mighty Blues songs.
That's so
I know they're red and blue as a team, Melbourne, but he was singing Carlton's theme song, and it was rough. I think you look at Max Gawn, and as we've mentioned, a lot of people, you play 100 games, they're like, hey, your kid's playing for our team. That's for sure. That's a guarantee. Well, maybe not for his kid. He might be a Carlton Blues supporter.
That's shocking, especially if he learnt that song because Carlton beat your team.
Oh.
That's an extra bit of salt in the wounds. But yeah, I'd be banning Carlton games in the house from now on.
No Patrick Cripps names didn't dropped anywhere. None of that.
I was talking about it. It's Tom Hawkins. I'm pretty sure Tom Hawkins' little girl has a Bontempelli little soft doll that she loves and carries around everywhere. And he's got a thing.
It's weird whenever you see the person who probably knows that your child's a fan of them and you're playing against them, being like, I hate seeing your face around my house.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Is it a big ask to have Dad's number on your back and you got a little soft toy of Dad? Well, I guess you got the real thing. So I don't know. And who doesn't have a soft toy of Marcus Bontempelli laying around the house? I know you do.
My question is, do you? Is the better question.
I'm not one on trial here. Let's get into my clanger because we talked about this last week and I'm bloody that sick of it. So now I'm naming names. So we got Matthew Richardson. Richo man. He put an all-time moz and he knew that he was doing it. See, that was the biggest problem because Oscar McInerney, we love the Big O, and he was going back for his first shot at goal. And Richo says, I'm going to do it. I'm going to say he's a reliable shot at goal. And he goes back and, well, he's not a reliable shot at goal because he misses his first goal for the year because Richo puts the moz on him.
Yeah.
We need to stop this. We need to put it out there, send a memo out to all the broadcasters, all the radio people out there. I'm watching you. No more mozzes.
Do we reverse jinx then? Do we say he's a terrible set shot at goal so he kicks him? I don't know.
I don't mind putting a cheeky multi on, and I can, Mason. So when I sit at home with my housemate, got a cold tin in hand, and I know I've got someone in my multi, I say, oh, he won't kick this. This bloke sucks. I don't even know why I put it in there. And then when he slots it through, I say, I knew what I was doing. I knew what I was doing the whole time. Now, we need a bit of that from the... You got the stat sheet in front of you. It says he's a dead-eye dick. Do not say that until he kicks it.
Yeah.
And I know it's not as cool doing it after the fact, but I don't care because he won't kick it if you say it before it happens. So let's just shut up a little bit. So I'm looking at all the special commentary people out there because they're the idiots that have to say all this stuff. Oh, he's a normal. And the other thing is, most of the time
he's on.
Oh, this bloke's a reliable kick at goal.
Yep.
Mate, when was the last time you looked at the stats? He's like 10 and 15 this year. He might have been reliable 6 years ago when that bloody thing started, when people started saying that. They say that shit all the time. They'll be like, oh, Luke Bruce doesn't miss ever, this bloke. What are you talking about? I see him miss all the bloody time. Oh, Georgiades. Oh, he's a dead-eyed dick.
Jesus,
all the Port Adelaide players.
Calm down.
I swear.
Shots fired.
Every Port Adelaide forward on the list. Port Adelaide, if you've seen one of their games this year, you know they're the least accurate team probably in AFL history. So let's not call them dead-eyed dicks because they can't kick straight. So let's give them a break. Let them kick straight, and then we'll get back on the kick straight bandwagon down the track. Okay. But I'm sick of that, and I've got to put some fire behind it because they won't bloody listen because we talked about it last week.
We gave love to BT last week, and now you want everyone to shut up.
I'm putting Richo in the gun. Richo, come on.
Put him in your sights. Put him in the crosshairs.
The problem is they know they're doing it because they say stuff on the lead-up like, oh, I know I'm mozzing him, but I'm going to give him the moz.
Well, he was like 30 out, so it was a very gettable goal, and it was just,
goodness.
Oh, man, I saw it, and I was like, as a big man, you just hate whenever people say that.
Yeah.
You do. You do. So you look at your film after, you look at the clips, you go, son of a bitch, Richo, you mother.
Big guys just want to hit the boot. So, like, don't.
Just want to get close. Yes. Just want to get somewhere close. Something you can actually manage.
Anyway, now
okay,
calm
so
down.
From now, you just, if someone goes for a set shot, just complete silence for the 30 seconds until they kick it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. Unless the bloke's kicked 6 straight on the night. Then he's filled his boots, and then you let him have a miss.
Okay, all right.
Let's jump through the results because we've got a fair few. Brisbane just scraped over the line against Melbourne.
Exciting game.
That was my lock, so I was pretty happy when that got over the line. We talk about North Melbourne. They're back. They were down a bit early, and they clawed their way back. So the best part about that is they're not out of games. And boy, does the North Melbourne crowd show up. They got some little glimmer of hope to cheer to, and they're back. So that's awesome to see. Sydney lost. Second one for the year against Freo, Flagman. And we'll talk about them a bit later, but they got the job done and they just kept answering. But it was a very close one, right down to the siren. Your boys, the Gold Coast Suns, got it done over your boys, the Collingwood Magpies, in the Mason Cox Cup. Wow. So that was a very interesting one. We'll talk about that. Adelaide, GWS. I don't know where GWS are at the moment.
The Orange Tsunami.
I'm putting a bit of distance between me and my boys. And we go to Geelong, Essendon, and go, see, this is what I have something.
Fire off on this one. You got a little bit of beef today.
That was 5% of my fire because I'm standing up for the Essendon Football Club later on in the show. And I had to slide it back to later in the show because we don't want to be demonetized and you can't say the F word in the first 7 minutes. So I've slid that back later in the show.
Frustrated? Is that the F word?
Make sure there's no kids in the car if you're listening to this one. St Kilda, Port Adelaide. It was good to see Kenny Hinkley boys get up. Richmond, Carlton, my God, you feel for Richmond, but Carlton are on they're looking dangerous. Is it a bit too early for their run for finals? Don't spend all your fuel tickets now, Carlton. And West Coast, back to West Coast ways, and Hawthorn just keep hawking. So let's jump into the big talking points because I want to ask you, we talked about it a little bit last week.
Yep.
We said that Brisbane were back. Have you changed your mind over that close game or are they kicking goals?
Brisbane's back.
Yeah.
Brisbane's back. We can officially say it. I might even call their home ground the Fortress again.
We're back.
I don't know. I feel like they've got a bit of that energy back at home. You know, they were down at halftime by like 20-something points. Like they had a little bit to claw back, and they did. And don't get me wrong, there was some help, you could say, from the umpiring.
Yes.
That got them the last goal to maybe get them over the line. But it is something we're looking at Brisbane as a threat in the top 8. And I think I think they're 8th on the ladder right now. They got 4 wins in a row. They're on a bit of a hot streak. So
been good since the bye.
Yes, they have been.
Maybe they
sat down, had a few beers in a circle, really hashed out all their differences, and now we're figuring it out.
I think Fagan was like, mate, come on. They got the blowtorch on me. I'm 100 years old. Give me a break. But it was good to see. I will stop you. You keep saying the Fortress, which isn't it's the Gabbatoir. Port has the Portress. But they go up to the Gabbatoir, and it's definitely back to the Gabbatoir because it was a bit shaky there early days. People were, breaking in there and doing whatever they wanted to do. We will talk about the Alex Neil-Bullen try that he scored on the weekend because Origin is on.
Yeah, I was going to say.
He scored an absolute ripper, but unfortunately it was called deliberate out of bounds that led to the last goal of the game that, may or may not have been costly.
I'd say it was.
That's probably fair to say.
Yep.
I would suggest looking at it, Neil-Bullen, if he had done 6 or 7 different things, it probably would have just been a ball in.
Yeah.
But the way that he, got around a couple of defenders and dived over the line and touched the ball down, probably hurt him in the end.
Yes.
It was more just a look. It was a bad look. And then he got stung with a deliberate out of bounds. No, it's not deliberate because I get annoyed with the commentators saying deliberate. It's insufficient intent.
Whatever.
But that was very deliberate.
Is what it is, mate.
Do you think it was there?
I would say yes. I mean, if I am him, like if that situation, right, you have to kind of like run into contact to get out of bounds. You can't just like jump over the line. I think that was kind of the way it looked. I mean, like whenever you put it on the ground like a try, right, that's pretty obvious that you have the ability to handball the ball out.
Yes.
So I think that was the reasoning behind it. So I do agree with the umpiring. Usually in those kind of dire moments of the game, they don't get called, right? But on this occasion, they did. And it allowed for your man McCluggage, the big 7-year deal fella, to seal the win for the Brisbane Lions up there at the Gabatoir.
How do you feel about 7-year deals? There's been a lot made about long-ass player deals. How do you feel about them? But who do you think they serve? Because it always feels like if a player wants to get out of it, they can. If a club wants to... Who does it give the power to? The player or the club? Or are they worth it? Are contracts valuable, or can anyone just do whatever they want?
The power is always with the AFL. We're very well aware of that. They're a monopoly that has power over everything and everyone that is in the AFL. Now, 7-year deals, like as a player, I think it benefits the player because it's guaranteed, right? You're guaranteed to get that amount of money for 7 years.
Yeah, and
that's like one of the biggest things I think with the contracts here in Australia compared to like the US and stuff, like you're not always guaranteed all that money. So with contracts here, since you're guaranteed, I'm always going to take the side of the player. And if you get a 7-year deal, I'm like, hell yeah, I'm all for that because I know you can financially set up your life for whatever it is to come in the future.
It's consistent.
Yes, but whenever it comes to the power of staying at a place, I think that comes down to the actual clubs. They have the power to say essentially, I don't really see you in our future, or we're going to move you on to whatever club. So it's kind of like a benefit for the player financially, but not for, like, he still doesn't have the power to really stay there if he wants. Like, yes, technically you do with the contract, but I mean, I don't think there's many players that sign a 7-year deal and go, okay, I'm going to play in the VFL for the rest of my career. Yeah. Like, that's just not, like, for someone who's signing a 7-year deal, you're obviously a good player. Therefore, you probably have high standards, and you're not going to want to play in the twos.
It can get pretty toxic there because you're right. It kind of can turn into that. It's like, oh, yeah, you can dig your heels in and choose to stay if you are the player, but clubs can make life pretty miserable for you if you want to stick around for another 5 years, waiting out your contract length.
We all know who we're thinking of whenever we think of the 7-year deal. I mean,
I don't know.
And I love the man. He's one of my favorite people in the world, Brodie Grundy. But you can see kind of how that kind of panned out over the 3 clubs that he's played at in the last 3 or 4 years.
Hey, Melbourne and Clayton Oliver had a pretty rocky relationship over the off season, and that he just was fresh off signing a massive deal. So I think that's where the AFL is looking at it like, maybe we need to do something to rein in some of these like massive contract deals. They're already looking at Harley Reid. That was 10 years for $1.8 million a year for 10 years.
What?
Yeah. So like
1.8. Who else is playing?
But like if you look at that and the direction of contracts, it's probably going to be a steal in 10 years' time. They looked at Buddy's contract.
Oh, Buddy's contract. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, with inflation nowadays, you just never know.
Buddy signed a $10 million 9-year contract or whatever.
Yeah,
and then by the end of that, it was like he'd easily earn it back. He'd easily earn it back. So
I mean, I don't know how much is going to be left in the rest of the cap. If you take 1.8 of it, I can guarantee you probably not making finals if you're going to take that much money because you're going to need some people around you.
True. Yeah, so, you're just backing. It's the gamble of clubs that hope that the cap increases year on year. And we've seen it backfire on a number of clubs.
Oh, yeah.
Let's keep moving along because I want to say another big talking point out of this weekend was Port Adelaide's big win after a year.
Let's go Power.
After a week
Power.
of just being dragged through the mud, the Port Adelaide Football Club, when they, at the time, still sat in 8th position.
Yeah, which is wild.
We did throw out some question marks after last week's loss at home to Brisbane, but we just said Brisbane's back. So what did you feel coming out of that Port Adelaide team? Because imagine being inside the 4 walls, because externally I felt relief for Kenny.
Yeah.
And I'm not even in the joint.
I think we all know the pressure was on Ken and the team and all that to try to get a win over this next period and try to make finals. And I don't know, we talk about it all the time. It's like I feel like it's just a cyclical thing. Like around this time of year, Port Adelaide maybe is like either they're top 4 or like if they're around the 8, like people just pounce on them for some reason. I'm looking at like Adelaide, not the same situation.
Yeah.
Adelade's further down the ladder, and for some reason, like it's just because it's Ken Hinkley, and I feel like it's like a story that's been told. They're telling it again every single year. It's frustrating because like Ken's been successful in getting into finals. Like, do you take a team with a coach that's been successful and say, look, we're going to keep trying with that, knowing that we're probably going to make finals every year, or do you try to essentially start afresh and then take the punt on whether or not you're even going to make finals?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm always probably of the side of Ken Hinkley of like he's going to be able to get them to the top 8 at the end of the year, and then from there it's it's a crapshoot really who can kind of be in form at that time. So it was good for them to be able to get the win there at home. Ken, obviously, Port Adelaide fans are pretty ruthless.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of this whole storyline is like they have a very high standard as to wanting to win every week. And that's fine. Like I think Ken would understand that and everyone else. But I feel like they very much can turn very quickly.
Yeah.
And it's like, who's the first person that hits in the crosshairs? It's like usually the head coach or like the CEO or something like that, right? They need someone to blame if they haven't won the game. And I think Port Adelaide fans can be pretty ruthless in that. And it's credit to Ken because he's been able to handle it for a long time. And he's been in their sights a few times and been able to get through it. So you could see in his interview after, how much that win meant to him. And kind of, his like mental health with the whole thing, I think. Like it would be quite frustrating to see all the criticism coming at him and to be able to get that win at home in front of the crowd, brings a bit of positivity to the group.
It's a very interesting one as well because you look at someone like Chris Fagan, who only, a month ago was in the gun.
Yep.
And how quick it can turn around. And I look back at some of Ken Hinkley's, coaching stats. He's one of the best coaching percentages. It's around 60 odd percent. He's lost in a couple of prelims, but if you look at the teams that he's lost to, they've been some of the best teams we've ever seen have a run at it. They lost the final when Luke Shuey took a dive, got the free kick after the siren kick. So they've had a couple of heartbreakers in finals.
Yeah.
And he's coached a long time without a flag, which is, I guess, what a lot of people look at. But at the same time, over the course, I don't like that they've booed him. And it was something I heard on Ads and Dunks podcast, but I don't like that they've booed him because even if you did think that it was time for change, the amount that he's done for that football club over his 10 plus year journey.
Yeah.
I'm thinking back to when I first started in the AFL. They had the tarps on the seats. No one was going to their games. It was a terrible, terrible place.
It's a vibe now. Like I want to go to Port Adelaide games and be able to sing like the song before and stuff. It's like they've created like a cool culture there.
The absolute resurgence that they had, back to finals, the never tear us apart, which is now being used against him and like stuff like that. It's pretty wild, but it's always a coach's time at some point in time, but I wish that it could be done better. We saw it with Bucks as well, when that was all coming to an end, and it splits the fan base and stuff like that. But I hope for Kenny's sake and for the club that they can turn it around now and go on a bit of a run because, we've seen it with Brisbane. They've been able to turn it around and now everyone's back on the wagon and
everyone forgets about the conversations and some of the stories that came out earlier in the year.
Yeah, it's like we never even talked about it. There was a couple of jets from their team because Rosie was also putting the gun a couple of weeks ago saying that he was down on numbers, but Zach Butters has not been one of those players.
No.
And he kicked a goal from centre stoppage that was
epic.
Insane.
Just
hit it at pace. I couldn't run that quick, let alone run that quick and try to catch a ball. And then kick it from 50 was nuts. It's cool to see that. Our boy, Horny Frank. Oh, my God.
Frank was killing it too on the
He
day.
was racking it up, kicking a couple of goals. I was actually surprised they didn't win by more when you start looking at the player stats. But similar, again, one last thing that I'll do in comparison to Brisbane Lions. Brisbane statistically were very strong across the board compared to last year. It was just that they couldn't put the finish on the board.
Yeah.
And you look at that, I wonder what position Port would be in if their forwards had been kicking straight, and it'd take a whole lot more strain off the whole team and Ken Hinkley. It's just something that small
can make such a big difference.
Yeah, there was one moment in the game Sweet, the big ruckman, gave the ball back to teammate Ollie Wines, and Marshall got a free kick and shot at goal. And it was very reminiscent of the Collingwood game that led to, the free kick and goal. It's good to see that there's some consistency out there.
I don't know. Agree with the call or not, as far as I guess the reasoning for it, or like the necessity to have that.
I think I just needed one more paid for the year to go like, all right.
All right, there's some consistency
it's a rule
whatsoever. It's a rule. We can say it's a rule.
People are doing it. Like, it's a bit more grey area and like umpire's discretion, but at least one umpire was out there watching the tape.
It's probably the same umpire, to be honest with you.
But it was very interesting, and I just thought a good one to circle back on. Let's have a look at some of the big winners, and you've gone with an individual in this one.
Yeah, Patrick Cripps is absolutely killing it at the moment. He had 40 possessions over the weekend, 13 clearances and a goal, and he's just racking it up, just an absolute bull inside, and he's a push for the Brownlow. I mean, he's already got one. Now, obviously, it's a midfielder's award, so he's definitely ticked that box being there. But he's just consistently, Carlton's going so well at the moment. He's consistently up there. Petrarca's out, you've got Nick who's probably, putting a bit of a push. Bontempelli's putting a bit of a push on him. But, Patrick Cripps is up there, and it's going to be an interesting little race to see who ends up winning that tiny medal. I don't know who it is, but it's going to be, I think, I don't know. I don't want to say who it is, but Patrick Cripps, if he continues on the way he's playing, there's a fair chance he's going to win it.
It's going to be an interesting count because obviously Carlton are right up there. You obviously get the wins, you get more votes. It's a pretty stock standard rule to follow. Doesn't have too many guys that would take votes off him. He's got Sam Walsh in there and abouts. He's a bit more of like an accumulator type guy that gets, but
doesn't get the praise that Cripps gets.
Yeah, when Cripps gets out there, because he's just a big brute, it's impressive when he goes on a run or kicks a goal or whatever. He's one of those that carries the team across the line. Bont, kind of the same. Adam Treloar doesn't really get the plaudits he deserves. Then they've got a couple of inside bulls that normally don't get the plaudits they deserve. So Bont does a lot of flashy things that carries his team across the line. So that's interesting. I think Sydney, they got Heaney, obviously, but then they got Warner and they got like a million other guys in there that they'll just take votes off each other. So it's going to be a very interesting count. If we still care about the... Do
you care about the Brownlow?
I don't.
Do you think it's BS because umpires are doing it?
I think it's massively bullshit. I think easily... If we all just said, let's cut the bullshit, it's got prestige around it and all of that stuff. I feel like the coaches' votes for me are number one because players' votes, you can they can stuff around with the votes and give it to whoever they like and all of that stuff. But the coaches' votes on the day of the game, and you're like, I'm giving 10 to this Oppo player because he tore us up and we couldn't stop him and we had no answers. That's the biggest... That's the biggest, most positive push you can get from a coach.
Okay, what if you've got Nick Dacos and Patrick Cripps almost tied for the Brownlow? You go into the last game of the season, both of them have an absolute killer game, but each coach goes, I don't want the opposition person to win the Brownlow. So they go, 0 votes for Patrick Cripps and 0 votes for Nick Dacos.
The only difference is the secret keeping. So if you're an umpire, there's no accountability for who you picked because it's all like... It's a pretty big secret up until the day.
Yeah.
Whereas if you had Nick Dacos get 40 and kick 6 in the last game and he gets no votes, your coach's name's right there. It's like,
right there.
Oh yeah, I gave him no votes because I'm salty as fuck.
Salty as fuck.
And it's so public. So I still feel like that's the best one. I mean, Gary Ablett knocked up a heap of them. I think it's just... the guy that tore us apart. And the best part about that is that it's not a midfielder's award. Midfielders do get it a lot, but it's like this forward kicked 10 on us.
Yep.
Give him the votes. This forward tore us apart. This defender, we couldn't get past the bloke. So it opens it up a bit more.
I mean, I looked at the other day and Brayden Maynard, I think they said it on the broadcast, has not got a Brownlow vote.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, shit like that because they don't win the game because most people think winning the game is like kicking the goal,
getting possessions,
or getting it to the forwards. Whereas defenders can shut down a game and don't get any praise for it. But I just think I don't know why the hell the umpires are so busy doing their thing. They're looking for something completely different than who's playing well.
That's what I'm saying. It's like they should be focused on adjudicating the game, not
but that's
trying
when
to pay
you're looking
attention
at
who's
the coaches. The coaches are only looking at how can we win this game, and they go, that player's stopping us or that player's doing it for us. So I think that's the best one in my have you got many coaches' votes?
I have no idea. I don't really count that stuff. I have got Brownlow votes before.
Interesting. See, we know which one you rank higher than. Obviously, the Brownlow.
I'm a midfielder at times, so.
Have you ever gone to the Brownlow? Ever?
No, I've never got an invite. I think they're probably too afraid of what I'd wear to it, I think.
It makes sense. It makes sense that you haven't got an invite, but I thought you would have got a token one once.
A token invite?
Yeah.
No, it's like, I've been gone for a few of them.
All the lads are overseas or something.
Yeah, no, AFL's never given me one, so happy to take one, AFL. Happy to take a Brownlow invite if you want.
I'm not sure why they would ever do nice stuff for you.
I think the AFL's probably annoyed with me enough. Like, that guy, we're not going to give him any platform to do it.
Let's jump into the other side of things because one other big winner this weekend, Fremantle Football Club.
Flagmantle.
And I'm so happy to say it because we got Longy over there. He was in the thick of things early in the season when they were grinding stuff out, signed the new deal early when they already had pressure on him.
Yep.
Then they were saying he was playing boring as shit football. So he's been through it all. And now they're coming out the other side and they're looking good because they got that defensive structure strong.
Yep.
And they won a game against the best team in the league and
at their home ground.
Without their key defenders in.
Ooh,
which is big. Wild and it's scary. I do want to see them, go back home and just win a solidifier just to shore things up.
Perth.
But
hopefully they can fix the field in Perth.
I was talking about it last week that I think that these Western-based teams have the hardest run year on year with their travel schedule every second week. People saying, you get used to it, but you're never sleeping in your own bed. You're missing your family. Yep. You can't get used to that.
I mean, whenever I was first recruited to come play AFL, like Fremantle was one of the teams that came to the table and was like, we were interested in you.
And you're like, where's that?
And that was the first thing I asked. And they said, it's in Perth. And I said, yeah, not helping. But I think like one of the reasons I didn't go there, I mean, like this is obviously my first experience of AFL was the fact that you'd have to travel every other week.
Oh,
and like I was just thinking like, that sounds like a lot. Like you got two options, staying in Melbourne where you play 75% of the games at home in the same like city, or do you essentially travel 50% of the time? So it is a detriment to Fremantle, but I don't know. I look at this game. This is a statement game for them. Winning by 1 point at Sydney. Like Fife, we'll talk about. He stopped Heaney. He had 6 disposals at half. Heaney did, and then had 20 for the match. It's a season low for him. And then Fife on top of that picked up 23 of his own.
Wild. And
so he's copped a bit of criticism and like hate for the last little bit, but you can't deny that his role in helping them win that game was impeccable.
Fair to say he needed it. They'd try to move him around the ground a fair bit. He was known primarily early as a midfielder that was amazing at overhead marking. They moved him forward. Not a great kick at goal. Very fair to say, I think. And that's coming from me. Also, not a very good set shot kick at goal. Haven't had the reps. But yeah, he just lost that aerial contest when he was up forward as well. So it was great to put him back in the midfield, give him a job, and he dominated at it. I hope for everyone's sake, everyone wants to see Nat Fyfe play footy. So I hope
everyone loves him. He's the nicest guy.
He's the best. So hopefully, that's whether that's his new role week in, week out, or whether that just helps him, find a bit of form and like start accumulating some of the footy. A good Nat Fyfe is only good for Freo. So
for footy.
It's good to have him back in there. It wasn't without, every game this weekend had a bit of something, bit of drama, bit of spice to it.
Yeah.
And Logan McDonald, firstly, the lead up to this play was brilliantly called. I think it was it Jack Rewell? It was someone was saying you need to watch Nick Blakey off the back of this stoppage.
Yeah.
He's going to run through, get the ball, and he just did exactly what he said. And he found Logan McDonald around 48. The man was standing on the mark, so he had to kick it from about 53. Now, he was talking to the umpire the whole time because we know after the siren, you're allowed to move off your line.
To Jeremy Cameron.
And then kick onto your line. So we learned that last week where Jez was allowed to do whatever the hell he wanted.
Jez does what he wants,
but this was a bit more important. It was to win the game or draw the game. Or evidently lose the game. All he had to do was score. Unfortunately, trying to get that extra bit of juice, seemed to spray out to the right and didn't score. Fremantle win away from home. Amazing result for Freo. But you pulled out something pretty special in this game.
Yeah, there's a few kind of little – I love the good feel moments of the AFL, right? You talk about some of the impact that AFL clubs have in the community. And Bailey Banfield went to Perth Hospital, I want to say it was, with the Starlight Foundation, and made a promise to Nicholas, was this kid that was in there, right? And said, if I score a goal, I'll do this celebration. It's kind of like the Spider-Man celebration with the hand, and there's a great photo of him doing it on the ground, and then they also had the video of him promising it to the kid at the same time. And I don't know, I just kind of look at that and I'm like, obviously a family, a child who's going through a tough scenario and tough situation and time in their life, to have something like that bring such positivity by doing something as small as an action like that on a field. Like, it kind of gives you that feel-good moment of just knowing like you can make such an impact with such a little amount of effort by being on such a big platform that is the AFL. So I just want to give a little shout out to Bailey. Awesome to do that in a game. I'm sure it would have, made their week or their year or whatever it is. And, credit to you. And hopefully, you get the credit that, you deserve whenever it comes to looking after these kids and doing those kind of things in the community.
It was awesome. We saw Guelphy do it earlier in the year with his painted nails. And obviously, former teammate of yours, Chris Maney, one of the all-time legends and nicest guys on the planet Earth. Big Starlight guy over there in Perth. So awesome to see. I love a good news story. And speaking of good news stories, Bulldogs needed one of them. And they got all their tools back all at once.
The big boys.
The big timber. And we like to pump up the big boys. It is a tall guy podcast, obviously, two tall kings here. Aaron Norton, he's back. Sam Darcy doesn't get much taller. Are you taller than Sam Darcy?
Yeah, I'm tallest in the AFL, so I've got him beat.
Who's counting? Jamara and Rory Lobb. And they've moved Rory around a bit.
Bit of a surprise with Lobby.
Yeah, so I've said it a million times before, like to see Aaron Norton back, but I don't think we're ever going to see it. But we did see Rory Lobb back.
Yes. Well, Alex Keith and Ryan Gardner are out right now with injury. So all they've got is Liam Jones in the back line. So it was good to see. They kind of needed that second tall back there in Lobb. With the other talls in the forward line, like you can't 4 talls in the forward line seems like entirely too much. So he surprisingly essentially went back and he had, I think it was 5 intercept marks and 12 intercept possessions. So as a tall fella down back, it's a pretty good stat sheet for a game. So we might see him there for the next few weeks and kind of have a reinvention of who we think Roy Lobb is as far as a player and where he plays on the field. But according to the weekend, I think you're going to see Bevo putting him back there for the next little chunk of time in the Bulldogs lineup.
So wild. He's been in a fair few different positions over his time. Up in GWS, up forward.
Well, you have to be diverse because you've got Naughton, you've got Darcy, you've got Jamara, who are legit key forwards. And, I mean, it kind of brings me back to me. Like, I remember whenever I first came to the club, people were like, oh, he's going to be a ruckman. He's the tallest person to ever play. And then I looked ahead of me, and it was Jared Witts and Brody Grundy.
Yep.
And I'm going, those two people are AFL level, and they're going to play AFL every week. So I was like, well, what's my way of being able to get into the team? I had to learn forward craft. So essentially my first year said, I'm going to learn some ruck stuff. I'm going to spend a decent amount of time trying to figure out how to play forward. And that's kind of what I think Lobb's doing now. He's going, well, it's stacked heavily up top with tall forwards that they're going to see the future of. He's kind of maybe a bit older than them. He's going, okay, where do I fit in this team to be able to play AFL every week? And at the moment, I think it is in that back line. So we're going to be interested to see kind of how he goes.
That's weird. I would have thought you would have picked running up and down the wing all day with that tank and the speed. And
back in the day, I did have a lot better tank. Not so much anymore.
Let's talk through the big losers for the week.
Let's get into it, Brayden. Let's get into it. Come on.
I actually don't even know what's happened to GWS.
The orange tsunami or
what they call them? There was an orange ripple.
The ripple.
The ripple. Oh,
your words, not mine.
We don't like that. We don't like the ripple.
Let's break it down. What's going on?
Well, where's the tsunami? Where's the wave? Where's the push? Where's the pressure? What are we doing? But they started the season on fire, and I thought it was going to be a continuation of last year. Because what's changed? Not a lot. They've still got all the guys out there on the park.
Great start to the year. 5 wins start of the year.
5 wins and then 6 losses from the past 8. That's not a great record. That's a losing record from that. So I don't like where they've gone. And the opponents that they're versing, I don't want to disrespect them, but they're not really they should be winning some of these games. So Yeah, I actually don't know where they're at the moment. We saw you see some magic from them each week because they're a team full of stars. So,
agreed. Are you going to stay on them? Are they still your team?
It's pretty hard to stay on them at the moment. They're not giving
change.
They're not really like pumping through any decent scores or anything. They're just getting like starved. They've got some of the most exciting forwards, and I love what Jesse Hogan's been doing this year.
He's a star.
To be fair, Toby Green's probably been pretty down on previous years' performances. Huge. He did kick a massive goal from outside 50. That was
definitely capable.
Something that only Toby Green could do, but he's string together a fair few weeks of no goals and I don't know what is happening at the moment. They've still got all the pieces to the puzzle, so it should be able to click back into place. So I don't know if it's just a big reset, but they've come through their bye period, so that's normally when you sit down, circle the wagons up, but it's not great. They're still pushing out some memes, so I'm waiting.
Is their media team still going out?
That's the last cog. If that falls down and we stop seeing memes, we're in trouble because that's all they've got at the moment is the memes. So let's hold fire to see how that goes. We do like seeing Adelaide back up and about because they're an exciting team, and we were just waiting for the return of Isaac Rankin.
He's one of our favorite players in the league at the moment. And over the weekend, you just had some of those just iconic moments from him of just being able to slip tackles and kick goals from like angles, and he's just exciting to watch. There's players like him and Pickett and Bobby Hill and like all these guys who are those small forwards that you just see them with the ball and you go, there's an infinite amount of possibilities of what's actually going to happen once he gets it. And he might juke 3 people, he might sell candy, he might just sit there and just take a set shot. You just don't know. And that unknown, or just having no knowledge of what's going to happen next is exciting for, I think, the fan to watch. And they just do things that you just know that other people aren't capable of. And it was good to see him return to that over the weekend. Like, it just was, I just loved it. It's so much fun to watch him.
I think it's, well, I've been told it's one of the hardest positions to play on the ground. And then I feel like once you see a small forward, there's a moment where it clicks. The confidence. Confidence to take it on, have the shots, like not be worried about, they set up more goals than most, but it's, when they get on a tear, we see it with Cody Waitman. He's got complete confidence in what he's doing and he flies for everything and he can kick them from anywhere. Love that position on the field, and there's none better than Isaac Rankin, who's kind of getting up into the midfield and doing whatever he wants. West Coast Eagles,
rough week for them.
Well, they kind of resorted back to a bit of the West Coast of old. At home, people are saying that they're very competitive at home in previous weeks, which they have been. Oscar Allen coming back into that forward line mix, and he's been pretty good early to get his hands on the ball. Accuracy is another thing. You got to anticipate that he's going to be rusty, limited preseason.
We just think that him and Waterman, obviously Waterman's been killing it. Like, you look at those two players in the same forward line, you're going, we're going to get at least probably 6 goals out of them every game. But unfortunately, they only had 1 over the weekend between them. So it's a bit of a, how do we have this cohesion kind of come together in the forward line, and where do we kind of see it kind of going? Because you can sometimes, whenever you have a big player who's kicking a lot of goals like Waterman, then you bring another player in, like, your decision of who you're kicking into in the forward line becomes a bit unknown. And you go, okay, wait, do we constantly go to this person, or do we look for other options, and then is everyone else set up around it? So it's going to take a little bit of time for them to kind of understand, I think, what the look inside 50 is going to be, but it definitely doesn't help whenever you only take 1 mark inside 50 in the first 3 quarters.
That's
not a good sign.
That's rough.
And you've got Jack Darling and Bailey Williams also playing, so
Flying Ryan?
It's a lot of talls in one team. I mean, you looked at the Bulldogs we just talked about, and like they had to move one of them to the back line just to be able to fit them all in. So it's going to be interesting the decisions that West Coast make as far as who's going to be playing in their forward line and how it kind of all comes together. But it's a bit of watch the space, I think.
Yeah, because it's obviously not just the forward line problem. Like, you need to get the mid-forward connection working pretty well. 100%. And when last year they were demolished by injuries, so there hasn't been that continuity between any of the players really out there, except for training when they've all been together. So give it time. They've definitely got the pieces there. That forward line is pretty dangerous. And then if you get the mids cracking, see what they can do over the off-season. Harley Reid and Kelly kicking it in. It's going to be exciting.
That's money.
We'll move on to Melbourne because Very disappointing. They're on a pretty disappointing run at the moment. Harrow's Brisbane just got over the line. Fortunately for Harrison, he only watched the parts where Brisbane were good, because in the middle, Melbourne was actually pretty competitive up in Brisbane, which I didn't anticipate. Coming off the last couple of weeks, Melbourne have had a couple of terrible performances, to be frank, but going up there, they were very competitive and leading for a sizable chunk of the game, and then just kind of pretty much gave it away at the end.
Oh, leading by 23 at half. I think it was like in the teens, I want to say, three-quarter time. So Melbourne had the game in their hands for most of the night, and then it wasn't until the very end where Brisbane took over and kind of came, I think it was like 75 seconds left in the game where Hugh kind of ended up kicking that goal that sealed it. But yeah, it's been an interesting one ever since that kind of Queen's birthday game, or King's birthday, sorry, apologies, and Petrarca going down. There's been a few things with Melbourne that just haven't really been clicking. So I don't know at this point what's happening. I think they're sitting like 12th on the ladder, I want to say, right now. And obviously it's a very close ladder, but they're going to need to get some wins on the board to make this top 8. And it's going to be an interesting little run home for them. And I will say a little bit of positivity out of the Melbourne camp, though. Your boy Pickett kicked 5 over the weekend. So bags.
So dangerous.
Bag for Pickett kicking 5. And I think he kicked like 3 1/4, and he just looked unstoppable. He's just sitting there and going left, right. Like, we talk about these people being so exciting, him and Rochelle and everyone else, and he definitely proved it on the weekend. I think he snapped him from like 40 just casually, why not? You just get the confidence to do it. You just snap from anywhere, and big fan of Pickett and kicking it back.
The ground ball pickups, just so clean, and I love a snap from distance that travels really quick. It's not one of them ones that floats through the air. It's like a dart snap.
Yeah.
And when he gets on a roll, he gets on one hell of a roll. And I'm interested to see how defiant Melbourne's going to be, because as soon as Petrarca went out, they said, let's just see, this is a bit of a build year. We'll see what we learn. It'd be interesting to see if Melbourne kind of step up and say, no, we're not just going to go quietly, because they did move Rivers into the midfield, and he's been really great. He's been great through there. Unfortunately, ran a bit too far when he was having a shot. Kicked the goal, didn't count, because you can't just keep running. Although you said we should scrap the bounce.
Got a bit of feedback on socials, Brayden, didn't
I got some feedback. Hey, we just put ideas out there. We put ideas, see how they go.
That's the one thing Australians hate, is an American telling them about their sport.
Now, this is the one that I want to get into, because I'm not sure if you saw this Essendon-Geelong game. Essendon, people have been waiting for them to kind of prove their credentials. They're still sitting up the very high end of the ladder.
They're top 4 last week.
Yeah. So that's what, when teams they come up against of the ilk of, Geelong, Collingwood, Brisbane, the teams that are up there, they just sit back and wait to see what Essendon can produce. Now, I was all ready to give whoever lost this one a bit of a mulligan, because the weather was shocking.
Terrible.
When you have a couple of those games and it might be a blowout, but it's as simple as like a long ball dribbles through, or it goes over the back, or like mistakes happen.
Geelong kicked over 100 points though. I mean, that's pretty good, I'd say.
Which is it is very good. Most of theirs they got on a roll. Now, this is where I want to start to get into this one, because
break it down.
Essendon and Geelong, they were very close. Essendon were leading for chunks of the first half.
Yeah.
Then it all got to a tipping point of the game, where I think it's fair to say, I've never seen in recent time a team get fucked that bad. Look, I don't have skin in the game when it comes to Essendon. Hey, all the best, good luck, try win a final. When it comes to this game, I think I got skin in it because I can't just stand by and watch someone get that brutally just screwed over repeatedly and not say something. See something, say something, Mace. And I saw something in this game, because we'll break it down. Incident on incident. Third quarter comes around. Game's still very much well and truly on.
Yeah.
Draper standing by himself in the forward line. Beauty. Going to have a big mark. Zach Tui comes through. Front on contact every day of the week. Nah, all ball, he reckons. Let's not call that a free kick.
Draper's reaction elite too.
What always happens in those circumstances? Ball, spitfire down the other end, Geelong goal. All right, we can cop that. That's a 2-goal swing. Don't even stress about it.
Is there more?
Deliberate rush behind. What is that? You can feel his breath hitting the back of his neck. I would say that's pressure. Let's give that a deliberate. Okay, that's another goal. That's fine. Then immediately after that, Ridley gets the ball, gets wrapped up in a tackle, does a 360. We saw that 40 times last week, not paid. Holding the ball. Bang, goal.
Bang.
Okay, that's 3 goals. Back to back.
18
Sick.
points. All right.
Oh, well, we're seeing them, we're paying them, are we? Goes up the other end. Bowie.
Yep.
Oh, blup, 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 blup. Dropping the ball. What do we call? Nothing. Didn't see anything. What are you out the back having a latte, sir? Because that's holding the ball every day of the week. Okay, let's not call that. Let's pump it back in there again. Oh, Stewart. No. No, not holding the ball. Okay, spits out to Atkins. Atkins, holding it. Tackled, nothing. Dives on it. What are we going to do? Let's call that nothing. What are we doing? It's like one umpire up one end was calling everything, and the bloke up the other end knocked off early and went with Harrow down to Sorrento for the weekend because he was calling nothing. And you know what it bloody did? It destroyed the game.
Destroyed their confidence, yes.
You look on the app, you look at the stats, and you're like, oh, geez, Essendon, rough. They just didn't show up, got flogged by 40-odd points.
Yeah.
Well, I'm telling you who did the flogging. It was the bloody umpires, and they flogged the shit out of them. Now, I can say that. I can say that with confidence. That's not what this man said.
Let's make that clear.
We haven't talked about this rant.
Do not find me. I didn't say anything.
We haven't talked about this rant, and I don't like to put it on the umpires, but come on. Essendon fans, I just want to look you down the barrel because someone's got to apologise to you. And I just want to say sorry. I'm so sorry for the way that you were treated, and we'll try our best to not let that happen again. And the thing that is happening every week, the AFL doesn't have to come out and justify every bad call or whatever, but they come out and they justify the absolute stinkers. And it seems like they're coming out and justifying absolute stinkers every bloody week. So let's just pull it back on the stinkers and let's just play some bloody footy, would we?
Do you think more umpires than Brayden?
It's not helping the game. I'm not even talking about that because we talked about it last week. Anyway, that's it. End of rant. I hardly even said the F word in that.
You're one of those fans I definitely don't want to sit next to at a game.
But I don't even care.
Like you're that guy. You're that guy screaming at the umpire the whole day.
No, the whole thing is
you sank 7 tinnies in the first quarter. Just get me away from this man.
I don't even.
There are children around, Brayden.
I am like the most low-key football supporter ever, but when you see a couple rack up back to back to back, it's like if I was an Essendon fanatic.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I'm so glad they got security to get those guys off the field because we talk about looking after them. Get them out of there because that was rough. Anyway, that's my rant.
Job, Brayden.
So I'm giving Essendon a mulligan for that one.
Okay.
We'll blame it on the weather.
The weather, that's what it sounded like. Exactly.
But that's it. Let's jump into the Collingwood Footy Club because talking about mulligans, they go up there. Now, I feel this is unfair because I still think people aren't giving Gold Coast the credit where credit's due. Gold Coast at home is a very difficult team to verse.
Undefeated, you could say.
Undefeated up there. What's the Gold
People's
Coast?
First Stadium.
Yeah, but what's like a... You know, we got the Gabbatoir, we've got the Portress. We need a pun name for... You probably can't work People's First into there, but... We need
we'll figure it
someone
out.
chuck that in the comments section. We need a name for the Gold Coast Suns home stadium that's punny with Gold Coast something.
Yeah, okay.
Anyway, we'll talk about this game because where did you watch it for starters?
I was at home.
Didn't get the free ticket up to the Gold Coast?
There was a question that was asked. Asking, look,
you got any free tickets?
If maybe there's an extra spot on the plane, I'll do my rehab up there, help out the Rockman, help him get over there and play against Big Witsy. And they kind of looked at me and said, yeah, no chance. So
how'd you see it rolling out though? Because one thing I noticed very quickly, Collingwood obviously known for their pressure, and they run up to the ball carrier, frontal pressure, get right up in their face, cause the turnover. Gold Coast hands were that slick, and there was always an extra person over the top. They were always well supported, and it just kind of picks its way through that pressure game. How did you see it?
I think it was, I wasn't there, but when I was watching the game on television, it seemed as though every time there was this pressure situation, the Gold Coast Suns were able to handball their way out of it. And then from there, they can get through that kind of midfield line, and then we're able to access people like Kingy over the weekend who kicked 4 goals. So I think that was one of the things that stood out to me the most is their ability to handle the pressure and be able to work their way through it was just super impressive. And it was something that just seemed like every time, we usually get that, holding the ball call or something like that to be able to get us to keep it in our half. It just seemed like they were able to get out and be able to continue on going forward and gaining territory on us. And it was tough to see. It's always tough watching like the boys that you play with, and then you're not there, and you're like they're away at Gold Coast, and you're sitting there, and whenever you lose the game, you just kind of like you have this like feeling of like just you can't do anything. Yeah. You're so far away, and you're just like, well, I'm still in rehab, still hanging. Like, should try to be supportive. It's like it's a really empty feeling. I feel like being on the sideline and not being able to be a part of it.
Especially when you're the first in back at the club, and they're all coming back into town, and you're like, you'll get them next week, boys. First off the bus, come on, lads, chin up,
lads.
But it was a very frustrating game. But it was all, credit to Gold Coast. Like the game that they played, amazing. Noah Anderson, oh my God, bro, please calm down.
39 disposals, 8 marks, 5 tackles.
It's ridiculous. And the talent that they've got coming through, Dimmer must be licking his lips.
Flanders was very good on the day too. He played very well. All I can picture is Ned Flanders from The Simpsons, but he was a good player on the weekend. But Nick Dacos, obviously we all know he's a very good player. He scored 2 goals, 32 disposals, had that one out of the center that just went bang, bang, bang. Soul Candy kicks a goal. Like he's
pinballed around
still does his thing.
Some of the most elite commentary as well. When he's like, they're going to get nicked. He's going to get it back. They've been Dacos. Some of the most elite commentary. And he was already a great player. We already know that. He's ahead of his time, given how young he is. But he's finding a knack of when all your senior leaders have been out, most of the 30-plus gang have been out, he's been finding a way to carry the team close to the line and sometimes over the line week in, week out. And it's been really impressive. He's got off the chain a couple of last quarters. He's still a young player, and he's navigating breaking a tag and things like that week in, week out. He's learning new stuff. It's hard to fathom how he's still going to have a lot of growth in his game for a player that's already that bloody good.
If you look at Demo over the weekend after the game, he had his interview, his post-game press conference, and he essentially said, if the game's on the line, it's the fourth quarter, obviously Collingwood's going to make a bit of a push. And he talked about essentially tagging Dakes and DeGoey because they're big game players. And
to think about that DeGoey goal too.
Oh, unreal. Mate. But I think it's like, I think it's him hearing another coach say that. Yeah. Like that's a confidence booster for you, right? Saying like, hey, I'm a game changer. I'm a game changer kind of player. I'm a big game player in that sense. And teams are definitely worried about it whenever it comes down to the pointy end. So yeah, it was a frustrating watch. Ben King played really well, I will say, for them. Like I said, kicked 4 goals on the night. And we just couldn't get past and couldn't apply our pressure enough to be able to, I guess get the win over the weekend.
Ben King is oddly underrated, and it's only because he plays for the Gold Coast Suns. But like up there in the Coleman, he might be leading the Coleman. He's tearing the comp apart, but everyone's kind of quiet up there, which I'm sure Dimmer must be absolutely loving. A bit of praise, now that you mention it, that Nick Dacos got. Imagine hearing Gary Ablett say that he reminds me of a young me. That's really pretty wild. And
did he say that this week?
Yeah, last week, and it was just pretty crazy to hear.
Gary Ablett Jr. or Gary
Ablett Jr.?
Yeah, okay, I just want to double check.
He's coming for
I love senior, don't get me wrong, but I think he's in a concussion lawsuit at the moment, so I don't 100% know everything that's going to happen.
And Isaac Smith said throughout the week that they had a double tag on Gary Ablett Jr. once in a game. So
I can see that,
they were both rotating on and off the bench because they would just run until they blew up and swap. And Gary Ablett still had 40 and kicked 4 on him.
Dude, just casually.
That's wild. So imagine hearing that from the little master. That's absolute praise.
One of the nicest humans you'll ever meet too.
Absolutely.
He actually is like one of the nicest people.
And one of the quietest, which is like we talked about it the other week, that it just builds the folklore around the person.
I remember maybe a story for another podcast, running into him in the off season and a yacht. He's essentially coming off a super yacht. It's a whole thing. It was wild, but it's absolute legend.
Let's jump out of this week because we'll move on with that week is in the rearview mirror.
In the past.
We move ahead into this week's games, and I was going to say none bigger, but Collingwood Carlton's coming up in a month, and that's gonna do numbers. Actually, we should get some tickets. because they're going to be worth some money. So I don't know if we just on-sell those. Not that you can, so let's just not say that on the podcast.
I was like,
Collingwood Essendon this week, Friday night, under lights. Jeepers. Both teams doing well. Both teams in the 8. You guys are still in the 8, yeah? Yeah, just checking. But not the Anzac Day game, but still big.
Yeah. I assume it's going to be a sellout. Friday night thriller. 2 teams, obviously big supporter bases on a big night. And kind of big implications for both teams. You know, the top 8's very tight. Essendon and Collingwood both lost last week, so they're looking for a win there at the MCG. It is our home game, I want to believe, so hopefully a lot more Collingwood supporters than Essendon. But yeah, it's going to be a massive one. They're a very good team, Essendon. I think everyone's definitely seen their capability this year, and they're definitely performing very well. So it's going to be one of the biggest games of the weekend. I'd say the biggest game of this weekend. I would comfortably say that, I think.
Biggest game in terms of numbers. There's some interesting games this weekend. I will say there'll be some pressure in that game. Both teams are going to crank it up to 11. It'll be a great game to watch. I will tip Collingwood in that. Obviously, we're tipping Collingwood. We're going to North v the Suns. See, we talk about interesting games. It would not surprise me if North turn around and win this game at home after the impressive performance from the Suns. That's how tight this competition is at the moment, Mason.
I think, I don't want to... No, I can't go against my Suns. I can't go against the Suns. It is at Marvel Stadium with North Melbourne being their home ground. And I think, I don't know, if the Suns get this W, I think they probably are making the 8. I want to say they might be in the 8 at the moment. They're right on the verge.
You want to see in the 8.
I know. I just want to see everyone wants to see the Suns make their first finals series. I think that's just like over the whole league, whoever you support. I think everyone's kind of like, look, we want the McDonald's-looking people like to show up in the finals.
Imagine if the Suns make finals and Essendon wins one.
Jeez, it'd be interesting.
Big little final series, that one.
Oh, man, I think the AFL would be absolutely stoked. But I've got the Suns winning this, but I think it'd be a close game.
Yeah.
I legit think it's going to be down to the wire. North, by no means, is going to get blown out the way they're playing. They're playing and keeping in the games and be able to take people to the line. But I think the Suns, they'll get the W, but it's going to be like a 10-point difference maybe.
I'm going to give it to North. And it's because North's fans are really getting up and about.
Loving them, aren't you?
That's given some adrenaline to their team.
Yeah.
And I don't know about the Gold Coast Suns on the road. At home?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Can't agree with you.
On the road?
Struggling a bit.
Yeah. Let's move over to Port Bulldogs because, oh my God, we're talking about storylines. Yes. Here's your bloody storyline. One coach was on the ropes at the start of the season and then one coach is on the ropes now. So we got Port v Bulldogs. Don't know what we're going to get from either team, but hopefully it's an interesting game.
Yeah, I've got, I love Ken Hinkley. I just want Ken to get some love. I'm going to go Port Adelaide, at Adelaide, so that definitely helps. I think the winner of this makes finals.
Wow.
Bit of a statement.
Wow.
But I think they're both around that 8, and the winner of this game might be the decider as to who makes finals.
I can get around that if Bulldogs win because that to me shows that they've turned a corner.
Yeah.
They're having a bit of a run. They're having some good games. They're kicking some good scores. So I'm going to go the Bulldogs in this one.
Huge. I just think if Port wins at home in front of a crowd, they're all going to love Ken again, and then that momentum kind of continues on, and they're going to make finals.
And the ladder is that bloody close. Yeah. One team's doom and gloom. The next week they win, they're like 4th.
We love you. Let's sign them again. That's just how it works.
Let's get into Geelong v Hawthorn. The Kennett curse has been dead and buried for a while, but this one is so bloody interesting because Geelong, obviously, good win last week.
Yeah.
Before that, a bit of a stinky form patch. But Hawthorn are probably the most informed team in the comp outside of Sydney, obviously, just went and lost on the weekend. So a very, very interesting game, this one.
Yeah, it's a danger game for Geelong. Geelong at home, that definitely helps them. But Hawthorn, like you said, has been on an absolute tear at the moment.
Is that a pun? Danger game?
Oh, it is a pun. Didn't even mean it, but I definitely got it. Oh, man. That is punny. Now, Geelong, I have to go. We'll win this one.
This is interesting. I'm going Hawthorn.
I know. I want to, I just want to say Hawthorn because I'm like far out. Like Geelong, big win last weekend against Essendon. And Hawthorn, you just kind of, Hawthorn's the underdog. You just want to see the underdog win all the time, don't you? So I'm going to go Geelong. Close game, but I can't look past the experience I have.
Yeah. All right. Yep. I'll lock in Hawthorn. Let's just keep going with form. GWS Carlton, this one hurts so much.
At Sydney. I'll give you a little bit of help.
It doesn't seem to be helping them.
This is your Stadium. Team. Come on. Give them some love.
Well, Carlton's just turning up. They're turning up and they're getting big scores on the board. They're full of confidence. Their forwards are turning it on this year.
Yep.
They get all the momentum. They can put scores on the board really quickly.
Let me ask you this. If GWS loses this game, do you think they'll make finals?
It's a hard one because they're like Carlton's pretty much as good as it gets in terms of what the competition's doing now. But I will say I'll back in GWS this week, and that's my last week. If they
if they lose this week, you're off them.
Yeah, I'm off them.
All right, I'm gonna remember that. Write it down.
Freo Richmond, for me, this is my lock.
Yeah, I mean, shit.
Got in there.
At Perth.
Freo's my lock. Over in Perth, they'll get this one done easy. Poor Richmond. But Freo are on fire.
Yep.
They've had a good run, and now they're primed for a massive scalp at home just to lock things away.
I think, I've got to go Fremantle on this one too, Richmond. Tough little trot at the moment, but Fremantle's on fire, beating Sydney at home. That's a big scalp. So got to go Freo.
Not a lot from you to pick your lock.
No, I've got this
out
one
of this
coming out. Don't worry about this.
We've got Melbourne v West Coast in Melbourne.
Could it be? No.
It's not? Oh, wow.
Nope.
Keeping it.
Keep going. Keep the train rolling.
I'm going to back in Melbourne, though. Yep. Melbourne, you look at that game on the weekend, and that's a really good performance. That's a really good performance. They didn't get the win, but it's still a strong performance. Come home, beat West Coast. Happy days, move on.
West Coast only scoring 30-something points this week. Definitely hurting them. They're going to have to figure out some synergy between their forwards and mids, and I don't see them being able to do that with the bigs of May and Lever in the back line. That's going to be pretty tough. So I've got Melbourne beating West Coast on this one at the MCG.
Good to have the duo back. Now St Kilda. Poor old St Kilda. I reckon the most boring ticket in town.
Ooh,
we can't. We got to be getting scores above your 40s, 50s, 60s, and it's not just them that can't score.
Last week.
Everyone they verse gets dragged down to their low score level. So
you're just saying every game they play, both teams just look a bit lackluster.
Yeah, it's boring. It's a grind. Dimmo brought it up the other week when they had the soul sucked out of them for a game. But then they come out the next week and they just put a massive score, and it's like you can do it. You can do it, and you're choosing not to do it. So let's turn up the heat, because when you play fast footy and you're kicking goals, your team looks exciting and you're winning games of footy. What's the alternative? You're playing this soul-sucking, low-scoring affair and you're losing, and you're down the bottom of the ladder, and you're probably one of the most disappointing teams this year. So that being said, I'm going to say Sydney wins this one pretty comfortably against St Kilda at home.
Yep. Yeah, I'm going to lock this one in. I'm going to lock this one in as the cock lock of the week. Sydney versus St Kilda. Yeah, like you said, St Kilda's been struggling. Sydney's going to be pretty furious the fact that they lost to Fremantle at home by a point. I think they're going to come out bit of fire in the belly, just absolutely smack St Kilda. Just get their confidence back and be the Sydney that we've been seeing all year and get that confidence rolling again. So got to go Sydney over St Kilda here, and I'm going to say big win.
Well, I hope Sydney can break the voodoo and get some score on the board against the Soul Suckers. We go to Brisbane v Adelaide. Now, I thought you would have locked this one in. I reckon Brisbane gets this one easily up there at the Gabatoir.
Yeah.
And Adelaide has been okay, but I think they've been inflated. People have been saying how good Adelaide is, but they actually haven't been that great. They've been losing games at home. They have a good performance here, there, and everywhere that makes people, it's fresh in their mind that, this team is good, can be good. They got an exciting forward line mix. But yeah, I just don't think they're up to Brisbane standard, because I think Brisbane are well and truly back.
I think there's a little gap. We're talking about like the top 12 teams being very close, and there's a gap of like 10 points from like 32 points to like 22 points, and Adelaide is at that 22. So they're kind of the 2 games off from the rest of that kind of group that's in between each other, trying to make that top 8. So yeah, I mean, it's tough. Brisbane at home, obviously they've won, I think, the last 4 straight, I want to say, and they're on a bit of a tear. So you got to go Brisbane on this one, up at the Gabatoir, as you say. And Adelaide, it's going to be a struggle a bit for a time. I think it's hopefully they can get some wins on the board at the end of the season, but they definitely have a tough schedule going forward. But I've got Brisbane winning this one.
Good weekend of games with plenty of storylines in there.
I'm excited. It's going to be a big game Friday night for Collingwood versus Essendon. I'm excited to get to that one and be able to see that.
Exciting.
That's going to be a story within itself. But it's going to be a big game for footy. But that is it for us for the podcast today. Thank you so much for listening in. As always, thank you for being a part of the community. Like, share all that kind of stuff with your friends, family. Tell them to listen to the pod. And just want to say a massive, massive thank you for being an absolute legend. But that is it from us today. Until next week, may your footy tipping go very well. And may you have an incredible weekend.
Cheers.